The African American Legends series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas varied as politics, sports, aviation, business, literature, and religion. We will explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they'd been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr., and with us today is David N. Dinkins, the 106th mayor of the great city of New York. Welcome to African American Legends, Dave.
As you know, I call you fighter pilot.
And that's what I was.
But when you...
But you're the 106th mayor.
Yeah, but I'm nothing next to you. When you enumerated the areas that you covered and you spoke about aviation, and I thought it's sad even today how few people know what you guys accomplished. It is amazing. And when I hear that B.O. Davis, who was your general, your leader, he went to West Point for 4 years and nobody talked to him.
That's just
4 years. Imagine what it took for him. But that's the kind of stuff you guys were made of. You were going to succeed, damn it, no matter what.
well, that's true, and a lot of us came from Howard University, your alma mater. And some of us came from Tuskegee, some of us came from Fisk, some of us came from Springfield College. So you had great education. And that is one of the things that I know you've been focusing on both before, during, and after you were mayor. But let's look at what you think young black politicians are facing today. How is what they're facing different than what you and I faced as we were working in the political field?
Well, I suppose in many ways it's no different. It was perhaps more difficult in our day because some things had not yet been accomplished. But thanks to what you guys did, the Tuskegee Airmen, you have demonstrated that we can read and write and count and think just like everybody else. And so that it was more difficult then because it was a first.
Like you were the first. And the person that you say helped to make you the first was Percy Ellis Sutton, who was the intelligence officer of the Tuskegee Airmen.
There you go. He can't get away from Tuskegee Airmen. But Percy, when he said to me in 1977 that he was thinking of running for mayor, and it was such a unique departure from what we had normally done. To become borough president of Manhattan was a big deal, and Percy, as you know, was the dean of the Board of Estimate. The Board of Estimate consisting of the 5 borough presidents, the mayor, the controller, and what was then called president of the city council. It is today's public advocate. And to be the head of that group, and he had really 1 vote out of 11, it demonstrated his skill and ability. And I think that had not the fiscal crisis hit us the way it did in the mid-70s, I think Abe Beame would not have run for re-election in 77, having won in 73 with Sutton's support, and having promised to support Percy in 77. I think he would have supported him and would not have run, but he wanted to vindicate himself, as it were. And so when Percy decided to run, even without Abe's support, it was really a departure from what any black had sought up to that point. And I was fascinated by the notion. But Percy always was a visionary, a leader.
He obviously founded Inner City Broadcasting Company, WBLS and WLIB, where you host a show. He saved the Apollo. He helped to start the New York City Marathon. But this is not about Percy Sutton today. This is about Dave Dinkins. Now, tell us, why did you decide to challenge for mayor?
Well, I don't want this to sound like I'm suggesting I was drafted. But what happened was back in 77 in the runoff between Ed Koch and Mario Cuomo, Percy led us to support Ed Koch. Basil Patterson became a deputy mayor, Herman Badillo a deputy mayor. I was on the transition committee, and Ed Koch, who had been a very liberal, progressive member of the city council and the Congress, in his first term, I think, was the same. But as his second and third terms, he proved to be more conservative. He moved to the center, to the right. And so we were in search of a candidate to run against him, those of us who had supported him earlier. And there came a time when some labor leaders and others came to me and showed me polls suggesting that I had the best chance of success. Not that I would win necessarily, but I had the best chance of success among those being considered. And I said, well, gee, if I run and lose, I will have nothing after having run for borough president 3 times. Indeed, the joke is people used to say to me, what do you do?
Run for
and
borough
I'd
president.
say, I run for borough president.
I used to tell that joke too.
So, but that's really what I was doing.
But not only that, to be fair about it, it wasn't just the cynicism of running for the office. It was the fact that the office meant something, and it was symbolic for us to be there, and it was important for us to have access, because that's really what politics is about, access. If you don't have access, you can't move things along.
That's very true. And so I'm pleased that we were successful and that we were able to do some things that heretofore had not been accomplished. When we discovered that of all of the municipal contracts for goods, services, and construction, 2 or 3% went to minority and women-owned firms. So we established a policy done by executive order, really, not law, that permitted women and minority-owned businesses, entrepreneurs, to get a bigger piece of the action. We aimed for 20, and I was at 17% when I left office. So I'm proud of that. Prouder still of the fact that we spent $47 million to keep each branch library open 6 days a week in the middle of a real fiscal crisis, which had not occurred for a quarter century. And but some of my bright young people, a fellow named Harvey Robbins in particular, said, Mayor, we can do it. We can do it. And we did it. They celebrated the 100th anniversary of the public library recently, and I was very pleased that they remembered that we had achieved that.
We helped to open it up, because right now, with the fiscal crisis all over the country, one of the first things that gets cut in most places is library hours. I had a story in the paper the other day that the library hours on the weekend and at night have been cut back. Now, people don't realize how important libraries are. Probably they may be a little less important now that we have the internet, but still the library is a place where people who don't have computers can go and watch the internet and use it and send letters and so on. The other thing that I recall that you initiated, which really goes on today, the fight against crime, Safe Streets.
Oh, Safe Streets, Safe City.
Safe City.
Yeah, which
And
was
David
subtitled
Silver.
Cops and Kids.
Yeah. Tell us about that. How does that come about?
We recognize the need to produce more police officers to try to drive down crime, which meant you needed more resources in related areas. Mm-hmm. If you're going to have more arrests, then you're going to need more resources in the district attorney's office, and in legal aid to defend, and in probation and correction, and on and on. And we also recognize that what was important was to provide means for youngsters, indeed the whole family, to be involved beyond the hours of instruction in school. And this is where our Beacon School program came in. And it was important to me that we were able to achieve that when a lot of folks said that we would not or could not. And I want to give credit to the people with whom I worked. Bill Lynch, the New York Times called the Rumple Genius. Mm-hmm. It was he who helped assemble the wonderful people that we had, bright, young, honest men and women of all ethnicities and different sexual orientation. They all came together and I think did a great job. And so where we failed, I'll accept the responsibility, but where we were able to achieve things, the credit goes to them.
But one of the things that happens over time, a particular incident comes about, and it causes people to remember that incident. The incident I'm talking about is the riots in Crown Heights, right in the middle of your administration, toward the beginning of it. And you did respond to it, but a lot of people didn't understand that your response, which was Safe Streets, Safe Cities, and Beacon School, was the thing that actually started the fight against crime and brought the crime rate down in New York City throughout the Giuliani administration.
Yeah, I'm fond of reminding people that frequently when they discuss crime statistics, they will say in the 90s, in the early 90s, the homicide rate was 2,000 a year, and indeed it was. But they talk about it as though on December 31st, 1989, there was no crime when Ed Koch was mayor. And when I took office the next day, January the 1st, 1990, crime statistics spiked and went through the ceiling. The fact is that they were always up, but they came down as early as 1991 through our efforts, and I'm very proud of that. I think because Ray Kelly is again the police commissioner, and he was my commissioner following Lee Brown, I think people acknowledge it today as they had not heretofore. And but I'm pleased and proud of that. In order to get the resources to bring crime down, we had to obviously have more police officers. And we didn't have the money to do that. And so we determined to put a surcharge on personal income tax, which required the assent of Albany. The city can't tax itself without permission. And it was very difficult of accomplishment, but with people like Judge Mullen, Milt Mullen, who was a deputy mayor in this area, and a lot of others, George Daniels, who was my counsel, who is today a federal judge, and Peter Sherwood, the only black ever to head up the Corporation Counsel's office. He had 600 or 700 lawyers under him. He is today a state judge, and they and others, we got this thing done. And I recall on one occasion we went to Albany and visited a white Republican state senator. And when I said people are dying in the streets, we've got to get this legislation. And we had agreed that we would segregate the money and hold it aside for these purposes, and we wouldn't just put it in the general treasury. But even that wasn't enough for many. And when I said that people are dying, this fellow said, my constituency is interested in auto theft and graffiti. I was just flabbergasted. But we stuck to our guns, we worked hard, no pun intended, and we got the job done, and crimes did in fact go down. And I maintain that we have the finest police department in the world, and that's why when Crown Heights hit, I said, gee, we've got the best cops there are, particularly at handling riot situations. And I remember after a couple of days of rioting, I said to the top brass, whatever you guys are doing is not working. Mm-hmm. And then they altered their procedures, and they began to be successful. So people sometimes say to me, well, what would you do differently? What did you do wrong? And I cite that. I should have complained sooner. Mm-hmm. But it is a sad commentary that Yankel Rosenblum, who was a rabbinical student, was stabbed during the first hours after the car in the Rebbe's motorcade lost control, struck Gavin Cato, killed him, wounded his cousin, little girl, and but the rumors spread that the ambulances had come and taken away the whites and left the blacks to die. That was not true. But that kind of rumor spread quickly throughout the community. Yankel Rosenbaum was stabbed. We visited him in the hospital, thought he would be okay. The doctors said that he would, but they had overlooked a wound that had been observed by the ambulance attendants, but not the doctors in the hospital. And of course, we had to take the blame for that.
One of the things about crises, how the media reports them and how the public responds determines what the direction of the crisis is.
That's
We
very
have that
true.
today and so many different things. But one of the things that you stressed were what you call the gorgeous mosaic of New York City. Since you were mayor, 1 million people have left New York City, but 1 million new people have come in New York City. So that I see today that the Asian population is almost 1 million people today. The black population is over 2 million. The Hispanic population is 3 million. And we still have a large number of whites. So what does that say about the New York City as a place? That what causes people to come, even though they may be a little upset when they get here and not treated right, but then to stay and then build their careers?
Well, they have found that the streets are not paved in gold. That had been the suggestion back in the 20s or so, but that's certainly not the case. When I went to school in Harlem, we were told New York is a melting pot. I have phrased it that New York is a gorgeous mosaic. We have as many separate ethnic identities, or almost as many as they have member nations of the United Nations, which is why I say we have a parade about every hour and a half. and that's not bad, that's good.
That's good.
And I favor that. And we are a land of immigrants, and New York City is the perfect laboratory for our nation in showing how people can come together and succeed. Bias and racism has caused problems over the ages. There was a time when the signs read, "No Jews or no Irish need apply," and language like that. Well, we're far beyond that today.
It's illegal, too.
Exactly. And we are not yet happy, but we are having great success, I think. And New York continues to be a wonderful, wonderful place, and I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Well, how do you respond, though, to the fact that the leadership of our city still tends to be predominantly white, and many of our minorities, African Americans, Asians, Latinos, don't seem to get into the top leadership? What can we do about that?
Well, the first thing we need to do is to see to it that the people that look like you and me register and vote. I used to say when out in the street urging people to register, and they would say sometimes, "I don't have a job now, I won't have a job later, why should I bother to vote?" And on occasion I'd get angry. I said, people died to get us the right to vote. And I would cite Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner, two Jews and a black who were killed in Mississippi down there trying to get people registered to vote. And the fact is that we need to all participate. We won't get the answers that please each of us every time, but if we continue to participate in the process, we will ultimately prevail.
I think people want instant change. They want, I have a black
sure.
senator, for example, we have an African American president, and many African Americans still criticize him because they say he doesn't speak out on black issues. What's your opinion about that?
Well, he's not supposed to be the president of black folks. He is to be the president of everyone. And he should be concerned about the plight of blacks as a white president should be concerned about the plight of blacks and any other group that's ill-treated in our land. And I think that President Obama is doing a far better job than some would give him credit for. And I say this as someone who supported Hillary Clinton. And when people challenged me and said, well, how can you support the white lady over the brother? And I said, friendship and loyalty. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton supported me, and she was my senator from New York State. I don't live in Illinois, but I never had anything negative or unkind to say about President Obama as he sought the office, other than perhaps to repeat the comment made by, I think, first Mario Cuomo, that you campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose.
And he's obviously had a lot of prose to deal with. You got 2 wars, you got an economic crisis, and so on. Now, talk about David N. Dinkins, the former mayor. You were at Teachers College, not Teachers College, Columbia University, SEPA, the School of Public and International Affairs. What are you doing, and what keeps you so vibrant?
Well, one, I love
playing tennis.
People. That too. I love people. I particularly like children, little ones, middle-sized ones, graduate students. Like I teach, and gives me an opportunity publicly to thank you, Dr. Brown, for having come to lecture to my class every single year since I've been there. And that goes back to 1994. And
I learn something every time I come from the students.
Well, they are bright. They are bright and good, and they really give me hope for the future.
Well, you do focus on policy. One of the things, you bring in people from various fields, health and education and the media and so on, to get them to focus on what causes you to make certain kinds of decisions. How do you make decisions? And one of the things you insist on is that we all come with the facts, so that when we present them, the students will understand that we know what we're doing, and that you, the leader, are helping them to figure out how to put this together.
Well, in the case of education, always Dr. Brown is involved, and people should know, if they don't, that Roscoe Brown, his doctorate is not an honorary degree, it is an earned degree in education. So when I present Dr. Roscoe Brown, I may spend a lot of time talking about the Tuskegee Airmen, because you're one of my heroes, and I like to tell people that. I really enjoy it. But I have, along with you, others who are experts in education. And I think it's of enormous benefit to the students. In healthcare, I do the same kind of thing. With criminal justice, I've had people as varied as our police commissioner, Ray Kelly, and Milt Mullen, who was a deputy mayor and formerly the presiding justice of the appellate division in the 2nd Department in Brooklyn and beyond. He's an amazing man. He incidentally was a navigator.
And I used to escort him over the sky.
Right, used to protect him, but on one occasion when you weren't there, his plane got shot down, and he ended up in prison, prison of war, escaped and came back to fight again.
Quite a man. Now, you also do a radio program on WLIB AM.
Yes, 1190 AM. And I'm pleased that we have a lot of wonderful people come and discuss subjects that are of import to the minority community.
And contemporary things
that
are happening.
Going on right now.
Like AIDS and
right.
children's services, defense services, and so on.
Well, I'm very pleased that we've been able to do that, and much of the credit for that should go to Carol Banks, who I got from you in the first place.
Yeah, she worked with me at Bronx Community College.
And she's terrific, and she helps me produce this by suggesting and then chasing down on the phone various people who come in and as guests. So we've gotten to the point where people vie for the ability to come and be on our show. And
what do you call the program? Dialogue with
Dinkins.
What time does it come on?
8 a.m. on Saturdays.
Good time.
11:90 a.m.
Very good time. Also, in terms of political life, How do you think that the next mayoral campaign will work out? We have Billy Thompson. We used to have Anthony Weiner. He's out of it. But we have Christine Quinn. We have John Liu. We have a lot of great candidates. Where do you think that's going to go?
Well, among the people who are candidates, of course, too, is Bill de Blasio, who is the public advocate. He was one of my guys. My candidate, as was the case last time, is Bill Thompson.
Mm-hmm. And he came within 4.5 points.
Right, and people should keep in mind that Mike Bloomberg spent over $100 million, and yet Billy Thompson came that close. And if you come as close as, say, 5%, we need to remember that 5% really means 2.5. Mm-hmm. Because if the margin is 5, imagine if you take 2.5 from the winner and give it to the loser, they're even.
Yeah, that's right.
So he was really that close, and being outspent, I don't know, 20 or more to 1.
Okay, as we come to the close of the program, I want to thank Dave Dinkins, the 106th mayor of New York City, for being with us today, and look at some of your prognostications. We'll check it out in 2012, and we'll know who's going to be the next mayor. Thanks, Dave, for being out there.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.